up? If you're looking to get in the wargaming hobby, this video is going to tell you the 5 best and worst ways to actually get into wargaming. I've been wargaming since I was like 10 years old when my brother walked me into the Games Workshop store and bought me Dwarves versus Goblins. And I tried my hardest to get into it, and I did. I really loved it, but I couldn't keep myself interested. And part of that was some things my brother told me, but I've learned a lot since then, and I want to share that with people. And so here's how we're going to do this. We're going to start with the worst way, the worst possible way to get into wargaming. We're going to go along the spectrum until we get all the way to the best way to get into wargaming. So the first worst way is recasts. God, recasts are so awesome, right? They bring back out of print models and they lower the price so far down. It's unbelievable. You can get models that are fresh from Games Workshop for like $10. It's crazy. The issue is it's an identity theft. What? Yeah, identity theft. You're stealing this intellectual property from Games Workshop, and some people justify that by saying, "Oh, Games Workshop is a horrible company. They're shrills. They just want to steal our money and charge us so much money for these cheap plastic models." And the issue is, while all that may or may not be true, the absolute truth is that it's still stealing this intellectual property. This behavior of buying recasts reinforces a negative attitude towards Games Workshop by affirming you that you are getting back at them. And you wouldn't be getting back at them if you didn't already think that they were getting at you. So that's kind of the negative, right? It reflects directly onto you, and that's not the best. The exception to this can be when Games Workshop's rules, or whatever company's rules really, include a model that is no longer in print in the playable range of the game, which means you have to resort to either eBay and buying a model that is overpriced due to the demand and its performance in game. Let's see, I can think of one clear example of that, and that's like Fuegan from the Phoenix Lord from Eldari's range, and he leads the Fire Dragons. Fuegan is like a really good model right now. He respawns when he dies on a 2-up, and that's pretty good. So you can keep him on the board really easily, and his damage is pretty good. But anyway, that's off topic. The issue is that that company should really have that model on range if it's in the playable game, right? So people justify buying the recast in order to get that model. There are some other ways to get it. Proxies, which is a more acceptable way, because the proxy is someone's original design that they've used to emulate this model that's in the game. But we'll talk more about that later. Moving on to number 2, 3D replicas. Now, a lot of 3D models can be used as proxies because they look really good and it's a really cool design, and it can be original to a creator. The issue you run into is when someone directly copies a model through a 3D scan and ends up with a perfect replica of a model. Now, in the past, when I was getting into Warhammer again, I still harbored some negative feelings towards Games Workshop, and I kind of do still now. And so I 3D printed some models I found online that were exceptionally similar to some of the models that are on the range right now. And that wasn't correct, and I acknowledge that now. But it is one of the ways to get into wargaming. It reinforces those negative feelings because, again, you feel like, I got out Games Workshop. I got past their pricing barrier, you know? But that's not a good way to get into the hobby, and it's not a good way for you to to feel good about the hobby, right? All right. Another thing about this 3D modeling, right? You can use proxies. Pretty good. It's a pretty good way to get models that are out of print or to get models that you really like the style of. Get this, one-page rules. Futuristic, grimdark, right? You can play with any model that's futuristic style, right? It doesn't even probably have to be futuristic style. You can play with any model, right? In a style that's similar to Games Workshop. And you can do that with models that are similar to Games Workshop without paying Games Workshop prices. There's websites like Proxy Wars that sell models that are extremely similar to Games Workshop models, and they even have their own rules for Proxy Wars, but you can also use one-page rules, and they're cheaper. For example, you could get a whole Eldari army for like 360 bucks. They're all 3D printed resin models. They all look exceptional. And that's probably about half the price that you'd pay at Games Workshop. Anyway, moving on. Number 3 worst way is expensive models direct from the seller. Some model companies sell their miniatures for exceptionally high prices. You buy a character model for $45, that's crazy. Here's an example. Here's an example right now. This guy, I think his name's like Creed or something, Lord Castellan Creed, something like that. Anyway, this guy, he is $45 on Games Workshop's page. How did I get him? How did I get him, right? I have the actual plastic model right here, right in front of me. You know what's cool? I went to my hobby store. They have $2 grab bags. And these $2 grab bags are little plastic bags that have random models in them. Random models. Tons of them. I've found Necromunda models from the 90s in there, and I've found Space Marine Scouts from a couple years ago. Like 8 years ago. But I've also found Castellan Creed, which is fucking actively in the Games Workshop store for $2, right? So you buy these models direct from the company, and what happens is the models are overpriced, right? And if you buy them, you kind of reinforce that bad company practice, right? And then you reinforce the negative feelings in yourself when inevitably maybe you don't paint those models or they end up sitting around and you can't get full price for them anymore. And you kind of feel like you've wasted your money and you blame Games Workshop for selling them at such a high price, right? So you need to vote with your dollars. You got to vote with your money, man. So when you go walk in the Games Workshop store, play a game, look at all the models, it's super cool. But before you buy something, step away, walk away, go fucking do something else for like, I don't know, 10 days. And then think again, like, all right, do I really want to spend Games Workshop money for Games Workshop models or whatever company, right? Games Workshop is just an easy example to shout at, you know? And do I really want to pay that amount of money for that company models? And if the answer is no, then go somewhere else to find those, right? And we'll talk more about that later. But if the answer is yes, then sure, pay the cost for that model, and do your best not to harbor those negative feelings. Accept that you're buying something for an exceptional price for exceptional models. Games Workshop models are exquisite. They're probably the best in the business, or pretty close with some other companies. Some other companies have really good models. Anyway, worst way, number 4, is getting into the hobby on a whim. And this kind of goes with what I was just saying, right? Painting and playing with miniatures is a huge investment of money and time. It's a commitment that can make you feel guilty for starting and ending up with large amounts of models sitting on sprue or unpainted looking at you from your shelf. So these are just some models I have that I want to get done soon, but I have other models like inside this this big cabinet right down there. Wait, no, right up there. Yeah, right up there. There's a bunch of gray back here. And all that gray is a bunch of models I got for on the cheap, right? That I even really want, but Games Workshop models are so hard to come by for cheap prices that when you see them, you kind of just want to get them. And I actually really ended up liking those models. But anyway, that's off topic again. Focusing on what we're saying, you end up with all these models looking at you, and you start to feel guilty for spending your money on things that you haven't been able to get to or finish or even enjoy. Um, so you need to take some time from the thought that you're going to purchase the model to the next time you go into the store, right? So like I was saying, like 10 days. Wait 10 days before you think about getting the model again. And then search for the models in other places that you can buy them. And then take some more time before you buy those models at that place, right? And then when you finally are like, I can't fucking take it anymore. I have to have this. Then buy the model. And you will feel so much better when you have it. And you have to be careful because inspiration strikes and it falls at the same swing, right? It goes so quickly. So when you get a hold of this model, you need to take advantage of that inspiration. Grab it by the balls, grab it by the cojones, and really invest that inspiration and that excitement into yourself, trying to finish that model as soon as possible. And you're going to get to a point where the inspiration kind of falls off and you're like, man, I don't want to paint to this high detail anymore. I'm getting tired of this model. And that happened to me. That happened to me just like a couple of days ago with this blacksmith model. It's in my cabinet up there. I would grab it, but I don't want to take the time. It's basically this giant blacksmith guy, and I did so well on the skin, so fucking well. It looks really good. I'm really happy with it. I'm proud of my paint job on the skin of that model. But oh my god, I just realized I forgot to paint the ears on it. Oh my god. Look at this. Look at this. Oh my gosh. I painted this guy, right? So you can see like not really, you can't really see. It's so out of focus. I don't know how to make it focus. Can I make that focus? No? No? Okay. Well, anyway, you can see that his ears, right? His ears are white because I primed it white. But I got to a point where I finished the skin and I was just so tired of doing all these layers that I didn't want to do anymore. So, guess what I did? I mixed up some what did I mix up? Oh, it was airbrush thinner, right? With some black paint, and I did his hair and made it look gray and black mixed together, salt and pepper. And then I got some flesh tones and soft tones from Army Painter. And I did like some leather to give it this cool look. And I did the pants kind of black, and then I did this sword. Like this cool glowy look, and I was like, oh, wow, that looks awesome. But I still wasn't feeling inspired, so I just slapped on a bunch more contrast paint, and I got it over with. So I wouldn't feel drowned out by the hobby. And now the model looks great. The focal point is the skin, and everything else kind of just looks good because the skin looks good. You don't even like notice the other stuff. But moving on, right? Entering the hobby on a whim, and just jumping through all the motions too quickly can make you feel really guilty about spending a lot of money on a hobby that is very expensive. I'm saying way too close to this mic. It's gonna be so loud. All right, number 5 for worst ways. Taking on someone else's pile of shame. You have this friend, he's been playing Warhammer forever, he got a bunch of models that he doesn't want anymore, he started putting together, he doesn't want to go through trouble selling them, so he says, hey man, I'll sell you these really cheap, just take them away from me, I'm tired of looking at them. And you end up with like a fuck ton of models. And maybe this doesn't happen to everybody, but your friends are fed up with the hobby, they're trying to sell their models at a reduced price, and we end up with a lot of minis, but at what cost, right? We have tons of plastic crack models that we may not have even actually been interested in. Like what happened to me, right? I bought all like 150 Dark Eldar fantasy models and Drukhari, or sorry, Dark Elf fantasy models and Drukhari models for $50. I got like 150 total models. But I'm not even super interested into those armies. Like I really am interested in Tyranids, which I have a 2,000 point army of, and Space Wolves, which I have like 1,500 points of. And I wanted to get into Eldar, but I haven't been able to get the models yet. And so I picked up those thinking, yeah, it's just something I could do, I could paint and have fun with. But now they're just sitting on my shelf, and I haven't had the urge to paint them, and they kind of make me feel down every time I look at them. That's the dark side, right? But the bright side is you can resell those models at a little bit higher cost, but still at a good deal for someone else, maybe, and earn you back some money that you can use to get models that you actually want. So you just gotta be flexible with these things and don't guilt yourself for something not working out the way maybe that you wanted. And that brings us to our number 5 best way to get into wargaming. And that number 5 best way is the deal, but at the game store, right? So game stores have some pretty good deals. Sometimes they have full new in box sets at 15 to 25% off, which is really good. And it gives you the good feels of supporting your local game store while also not supporting that exceptionally greedy miniature company that doesn't care about their player base too much. And it still gives you that sweet plastic crack for the cheap. You get to smell it. It smells super good. And you're keeping the dream alive for some poor guy who just wanted a cool store, but after COVID is just barely sliding by month to month. So support your local game store, you know? Yeah, and moving on from that, right? We get to our number 4. The deal. The deal, but only for a couple of models, okay? Look at you can find the deal on for some obscure model like eBay, the game store, Mercari, Facebook Marketplace, whatever place you're gonna go with that allows you to get that expensive model for the cheap price, right? So like I did this. I got Psychophage from the Tyranids, and Psychophage came in the Leviathan box or something, some big box of Space Marines versus Tyranids. And I guess whoever got that box only wanted the Space Marine side, so they're selling the Psychophage because the Psychophage isn't very good in game right now, so nobody really wants it. And they're selling it for $15 with a $5 shipping. I was like, holy shit, I can get this model that's normally like $50 or whatever for $20. That's awesome. So I ordered it. And I got it. And it was still on the damn sprue. It was still on the sprue. And I got to put it together and paint it all up all nice. And it was very exciting. So that's the way. That's the way to do it the good way. Now, the third best way is the deal at one of those places, you know, Facebook Marketplace, local game store, Mercari, eBay, anywhere, right? And you get a bunch of miniatures in a box for super cheap, like 150 miniatures of Dark Elves and Drukhari for $50, right? And that's awesome. And then you go with all these freaking models and you go to one page rules and you download the free rule set and then you find a friend and you play one page rules with them. Right? And you got all those models for $50. So what do? Right? You have 150 models. Here's the best thing that I think you can avoid the unpainted model syndrome with. Here's what you do. You put down some double-sided tape and you put all those models on there and you spray paint them all black, and then you give them a zenithal of a color. It's important to use a color, not just white. You can do white, it'll be fine, but of a color. And then you get your dry brush out, or if you have an airbrush, you could also use an airbrush, and you dry brush a detail color, one detail color on like one part on all the models. Maybe like the biggest part of this model is like cloth or armor or whatever, right? And this can vary unit to unit. And they do dry brush that detail or airbrush, whatever you want to do. And then you end up with models that like kind of look good, oddly look good. Like maybe like a black with a zenithal of like green on orc models, right? And then you dry brush all of their clothes like brown leather, like dry brush brown on there. And then like from like 10 feet away, they look okay, right? They look, whoa, like what's going on with those models? And then you look close and you're like, oh wait, these are literally just barely terminate, right? And then you get some texture base and you put it on the base, right? Like a Grelin Earth, right? And then you have models that like look fine and you can play the game and not feel super ashamed. And then whenever you get a little bit of time, you just touch up the models like one model at a time. You touch up a little part of them. Add another base color. Add another color here, right? You could even use contrast paint and just go ham, right? But contrast paint tends to work a little bit better on not black. So maybe you do a base coat of like gray and then a zenithal of whatever color, and then use some contrast paints to get a little step farther every once in a while when you're working on these models. All right, that brings us to the best way number 2, and that's one-page rules, right? It's a free rule set that allows use of any models. And I was kind of talking about this in the last one, the deal, right? And that means you can use your super expensive, exclusive, FOMO-inducing minis all the way to your cheap frostgrave / stargrave, like North Star military miniatures minis. And because one page rules comes with rules for Grimdark Future and rules for, Age of Fantasy, you can play whatever you want, really. And not to mention that one page rules is not incentivized by selling miniatures, right? So they're not trying to sell a bunch of miniatures for you to get to this arbitrary point value. Oh, shoot. Alexa, stop timer.
3-hour timer stopped on kitchen.
And you're not having this company that has conflicting interests by creating a rule set and then incentivizing the purchase of a lot of models based on point values to match those rules, right? So one page rules tends to require a lot less models than Games Workshop's rule sets do, which is nice. So you need less models, which means you pay less and you play more. Isn't that great? You spend less time hobbying and more time playing. Hobbying can be kind of a double-edged sword because you get tired of it, takes a lot of time, etc., etc., etc. All right, next. The best way to get into miniature wargaming at this time is probably Stargrave Frostgrave, in my opinion. Their models are extremely cheap. Oh my god, it's an excellent skirmish game with an exceptionally low monetary investment and low hobby investment. A 2-player set of the game costs about $30, right? It's like 20 pounds. I don't know what the exact conversion is, but I think it's about $30. And what's cool about that is that you can split that with a friend, right? $15 each person, and you each get 10 models, right? Their little box is like, it'll be like 20 models of like rebel guys or like cultists or like soldiers or whatever, right? And so you split that set and then you paint some cardboard terrain, right? And that terrain can be so easy to make. Look at this. I'm so excited about this. I took the time the other day, like 45 minutes or an hour, to paint up or really carve out the corner of a cardboard box. I even have to think about anything. I just got the corner of a cardboard box and I got my hobby knife and I freaking cut through it, right? And I cut through it. And then I got this shape and then I cut some windows in, just haphazardly offset, And then after that, I painted it all black, and then I did some like gray from the top, so like added a little variation to the colors, right? And then on the outside wall, I sprayed some contrast paints or speed paints or whatever, right? Of like purple and greenish to give it some like hues to the color, right? And then oh yeah, I forgot I added these little shelves, right, with some hot glue, and that was it. It took like 45 minutes, right? And so you make some terrain for your little game, right? And then I think frostgrave, right, and stargrave, they don't require specific models, so you can get away with just that first $30 investment split between you and a friend. But the other thing you can do, right, is because frostgrave, stargrave, they have like it's like 10 models, right? It's like one wizard for frostgrave, and then like two special models, and then 8 or 7 guys, I think it is. And so you can get those extra models, and they're like £7 for 2 wizards, and that ends up being like $12 or whatever. And then I don't remember what the other thing is, but anyway, super low monetary investment. And it's literally like by far the cheapest game to start playing. You can use any balls. You can play with pennies to imagine, right? Just to try out the game. You just buy the rule book, right? I think the rule book is $30, which is like the cheapest rule book out anyway. Like I think it's even cheaper. You can get a PDF set, and it's cheaper than that. But yeah, so you don't even require physical models, and you can just play and find out whether or not you even like the rule set of the game. And that's brilliant. Frostgrave, Stargrave, so brilliant. And Stargrave is the futuristic version, Frostgrave's the fantasy version. So choose whichever one you want. And that's literally the best, absolute best way of getting into miniature wargaming. In the end, it's your choice. But the main thing is to keep your hobby happy and play some games. Thanks for watching.